Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Welcome to Listener Stories, a chilling series where we delve into the depths of the unknown through spine-tingling tales submitted by you, our listeners. From eerie encounters with the supernatural to inexplicable phenomena that defy all logic. Join us as we navigate the shadows of the human experience and explore the darkest corners of the imagination. Each episode promises to leave you on the edge of your seat, questioning what lurks in the darkness and what secrets lie hidden in the night. So dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for a journey into the realm of the unexplained. Shadow Bandits. Dear Sirs, how long I've waited to hear from others about what I've dealt with. I'm 50 years old now, and this happened to me when I was in my late 20s. I was living in the city of Pomona, California. It was my sister and her family's home. It was located right in front of Pomona High School. From the front yard, you could see the sign in gold metallic letters that spelled out Pomona High. My sister and her family were gone for the weekend. I had the house to myself. I had a large bedroom, which was half of an even larger living room, divided by a ceiling divider that could be opened and closed at will. It was a Friday night. Suddenly, their dog started barking nonstop at the south side of the house. It took me a while to realize it, but there was a gangster-type individual at the south side of the house keeping the dog occupied, while another was rummaging through a shed in the back. I picked up a baseball bat only to look up and see the guy who had been rummaging through the shed looking at me through my window. We stared at each other for a few seconds, then simultaneously bolted toward the front yard. Me unlocking the front door allowed both of the men to escape. I walked back into my room, closed my bedroom door, and sat on my bed. Then I see two shadows where my door meets the floor. One started to whisper to the other in English. It was telling the other one what I was doing, play by play. Still angry and fired up from what had just happened, I figured it was the same thieves who had come back and had gotten into the house. I jumped up with the bat again and flung open the door. There was nothing there. I closed the door, and that's when I saw through a window in the house that looked into the indoor laundry room. Two beings walked through the back door like ghosts, then a second locked door like nothing. They weren't shimmering like the predator. They were more like humanoid forms, but just blurs or distortions. If they stood still, you probably wouldn't even know they were there. They came right back to my door and started with the play-by-play stuff. One was bigger than the other. The bigger one was only about 4 feet tall, and the smaller one about 3 feet tall. The terror I felt was unreal. I was in good shape then, and a veteran who had been a problem solver with CID. In other words, I would get rid of people under the table, if you will. The blackest of black missions, legal or not. So I wasn't a stranger to fear in high doses. But fear comes in different flavors, and this flavor was just alien to me. Anyway, I couldn't understand why they spoke such perfect English. I didn't get the impression that they were two adults either. It sounded like the little one was the child or apprentice to the bigger one. I crawled under my bed. It was roughly 10 p.m. I woke at about 9 a.m. and crawled out from underneath my bed. The day was beautiful. The sun was shining and I felt fearless for about 30 seconds. Those things walked right back into my house, right up to my bedroom door, and started again. This is frightening at night, but when it happens during the day, it's more distressing because at least in the night you have hope of being saved by the light of day. Now there was no hope. The fear was horrid. It finally gave way to my friend, rage. There's something inside all of us. It will only come out in super high scenarios of danger or fear. You never know what you have until you go there. Mine is a form of rage that is calm and far more disciplined than I am. I had decided to open the door and bring the bat down on their heads whack-a-mole style. But I think they can read minds because at that moment, they calmly walked out of my house. They were blurs, but yet cast a small shadow. Spoke English. Everything said was in a whisper. I will never forget them. This is a true story. Signed, Freddie Sanchez. Shadow people, shadow beasts. I've recently stumbled upon your videos, which I deeply enjoy. My mostly grown children love watching scary YouTube channels, which I am usually not into. After watching one of your compilations in which you related the events of your mother and subsequent Joshua Tree story, I'm reminded of several events I had in 2002 and 2003. My oldest daughter was born in February of '02 in Mississippi, and shortly after, my wife's parents convinced us to move in with them back in Georgia. We moved back in March or April. We had 2 cats, a male and a female, with us. My in-laws had a split level where the front door opened onto a stairwell up and down. The back went to the bottom floor, which is where we stayed. Me, my 13-year-old brother-in-law, wife, and later my blood brother all had numerous encounters. Back then, the house was at the end of the street with many acres of woods to the rear and one side. Early on after moving in, we had to put the cat's cage on the back porch due to my mother-in-law being allergic. One night, I put them up around dark. I went out and fed them around 10 p.m. as I was going to bed. I went inside and was heading to bed when I heard some very loud animal noises coming from outside. I ran back thinking one of them had gotten stuck. The sounds woke my wife and she came running shortly after. When I got to the cats, Maddox, the female, had been hollowed out. I was a paramedic for many years at a busy 911 service, and I swear I have never seen anything like it. She was open from mid-ribs straight through the groin. Her back legs were broken, and all her organs were gone. The other cat was cowering in the corner of the cage as far away as possible. There was not a drop of blood anywhere. It was horrific and terrifying. I had literally fed them, walked inside, closing the sliding glass door and into the bedroom when this occurred. This was just the beginning of terrible events at this house. When talking to my brother-in-law one day, we got to talking about seeing weird shadow figures. He had grown up in this house, and I had started seeing shadows out of the corners of my eyes very frequently. He started telling me that he had been seeing it for many years, and that it used to stand over his bed at night. Every time, dozens, I saw one, I had a deep sense of impending doom. Many small events throughout 2002 occurred, but in 2003, my little brother graduated high school in Florida and moved up to Georgia to be near me. He was often with me. One night, we were out back smoking with the porch light behind me. Around the concrete slab of the porch was a little gated fence about 3 feet high. We'd been sitting outside for a while and had several Coke cans on the railing. While smoking, we heard growling coming from what felt almost everywhere. My brother's a big guy at almost 6'5", and I heard growling from the woods enough that we weren't initially that worried about it. After a few minutes, I squatted down and saw what I could only describe as a very large, shadowy dog with red eyes charge us from where my shadow touched the tree line. I yelled and fell back on my butt. My brother jumped back. As soon as my shadow no longer touched it, it was gone. We ran inside. Several hours later, deciding we weren't going to let our imaginations get the best of us, we went back out to smoke again. We took a flashlight outside and walked over to the tree line while smoking. While looking toward the rear of the property, we saw a pair of red eyes, not glowing, but probably just a deer or dog or something. We were laughing until we saw that it looked like it stood to be about 7 or 8 feet tall. It was intimidating, but figured it might have just been a raccoon climbing a tree, until we heard loud growling. After earlier, our courage broke, and we hauled ass back toward the house. We could hear something heavy running through the woods to our left. As we reached the gate, it felt like something moved at us from the woods and knocked all the Coke cans off the railing. We got inside and locked the door. My brother-in-law had heard us yelling and came running downstairs. While talking to him, we happened to look at a mirror hanging over the couch, and we could all clearly see what looked like a skull in the reflection of the sliding back door. Again, sorry for the long email. I have so many other events like this I could probably write a book. I would never tell others these stories, as I look at a lot of stuff as just hokey. But your stories, while different, struck a chord. Anyway, if you want any of the other stories, let me know. Thank you for making me feel a little less crazy, and sorry for the long mail. Signed, James. Bizarre vehicle encounter. The only person I've ever shared this story with is my wife. What I experienced was as real as anything else in my life, but I know that most people would not believe me if I tried to explain it to them. I live in Austin, Texas. I noticed that not many of your stories come from the Lone Star State, and I want to help remedy that. At this time, I was living at the southernmost point in Austin and working in a city called Round Rock, which is just north of Austin. It was about a 40-mile commute that I embarked on each day to and from work. The shifts at my job were 4 10-hour shifts instead of the traditional 5 8-hour shifts, and I split 2 early shifts and 2 late shifts with one of my coworkers. The late shift meant that I would arrive at work at 11:30 a.m. and leave at 9:30 p.m. The night of my strange experience, I'd been working a late shift. I finished at 9:30, got in my car, and headed down Interstate 35 like normal. It was dark out and a clear night, and most likely relatively warm. I think it was around the month of September in 2013. This is how it unfolded. I was driving in the left lane on the highway, and I passed a section where there's an on-ramp on the right from a connecting highway. As I was passing this area, I noticed a vehicle come down the on-ramp and join the rest of the traffic on I-35. I can't explain exactly what this vehicle looked like because it was dark out, and I don't think I ever stared directly at it. It was a 4-door sedan-type vehicle with potentially any recent make of the last 30 years. What was especially noticeable about the vehicle was its driver, who I can't exactly describe either. He appeared to be a male, 35 to 50 years old. He was hanging out of the driver's side window, waving his left arm in the air and really hooting and hollering like he was having a great time. The vehicle was also making maneuvers that are physically impossible for any kind of car I've ever seen. The vehicle would make semicircles and sometimes full circles around the other cars on the highway while keeping up with the traffic. It's tough to convey how horrifying it was to see this while driving down the highway at night. I didn't even have time to register how unbelievable all of it was. I just had time to see a wildly reckless vehicle swerving around the highway, and I honestly believed that I was about to die. It didn't seem like there was any way a car could do that without causing a major accident. I didn't even tense up because I was so sure of impending impact. I actually relaxed my body as much as I could. But me and all the other vehicles just continued down the highway. It was torture watching this maniac out of the side of my eye, and he had this presence of really taunting me or anyone else who could see him. At one point, some debris hit the right side of my vehicle. It was probably just some pebbles on the highway, but I remember thinking this crazy driver was throwing something at me. Amazingly, after just a minute or so, the crazy driver took the next exit and left the highway. I watched the vehicle as it went down the off-ramp and joined the street traffic, and it was continuing to jerk around wildly until I lost sight of it. The next few minutes of driving, I took a few deep breaths of relief, and only after several minutes did I start to piece together what had just happened and realize that I just had a paranormal experience right there on the highway. I hope you appreciate my story. Signed, Alex. Invisible Entity Encounter. Hi. I commented under one of your videos my story about my encounter with an invisible entity. Here's the story again. In late 2014, I was living in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania with my now ex-husband and 2 boys. We lived in a trailer on his uncle's property. His uncle lived directly across from us about 20 feet, and there were also 2 other trailers on his property to the right down at the bottom of a hill on the property with woods next to it. This was November. It was cold, I remember. Being that we lived in the sticks, my ex's uncle would burn the trash, so one dusk I go out to walk the trash to the bottom of the hill. As I'm walking past the trailers situated to the right, I hear a rustling noise seemingly coming from the roof of one of the trailers. I look and see nothing, thinking it's just an animal of some sort. I walk a few more steps, almost now to less than a foot past the second trailer, when I hear the thud of feet hit the ground from atop the trailer. But there's nothing there. I stand there baffled for a moment, and as I said, the sun was setting. So just as whatever this was starts toward the woods, I catch the glimpse of an outline of a humanoid figure, and I watch as the brush parts as this thing walks through and into the woods. My thoughts were, WTF was that? Am I actually awake? Is this a dream? A glitch in the Matrix? Then to, it's aliens. So I threw the garbage and ran back up to my trailer and tell my ex, whom of course didn't believe me. Now a few days prior to this, I had an encounter with a UFO. I'm an avid sky watcher and was out with my flashlight, a long cop-style light. I saw this bright light that was quite low. It was not a star, so I started shining my light on it and clicked the flashlight on and off 3 times. It mimics my flashes. I stood there completely convinced that yes, there are ETs definitely. We did this on and off for about 15 to 20 more minutes, then the light suddenly vanished, as if it just faded into the night sky. Complete camouflage. I did not recall falling asleep that night and woke with my pants torn to shreds. Make of that what you will. I've had strange encounters all my life, starting back to when I was a child. I've seen angels, UFOs, ETs, orbs, and I believe a Bigfoot too, not far from where my encounter with the invisible entity was. I've also had 3 near-death experiences and heard the voice of God as I was going to the beautiful heavenly colored lights. I truly believe that the world we live in is no doubt stranger than fiction. Thank you for reading my story. Sincerely, Sonny J. Harmful Humanoid. This happened to me in 2016. I moved from New Mexico to Washington State. Well, I used to go walking with a family member every morning after taking her children to school near Battleground, Washington, in Battleground Lake State Park. On this particular day, she had errands to run, so I found myself going alone. I parked my car, get out, stretch, and get ready for my 3-mile daily walk. So I started off walking and got about 5 minutes into the park, and everything fell quiet. Eerily quiet at that, and nothing looked familiar. I got this weird feeling I was no longer alone. I could feel someone or something watching me. I panicked and started walking faster. I could hear twigs breaking around me in every direction, so I started walking faster still. Suddenly, I'm in a full-on running sprint. I broke from the tree line and ended up really far away from my car, like 15 minutes away, when I know I'd barely walked a few minutes. I could still hear hurried footsteps behind me though, and all of a sudden I felt hands behind my back and I was shoved hard to the ground. Whatever had done it with such hatred and anger that when I fell, I actually heard my bones break underneath me. I'd shattered my elbow and broke my wrist, and that's not even the worst part. Well, thank God the person driving saw me before I was pushed in front of his car. But he did say he saw what looked like a humanoid shadowy figure literally push me in front of his car. The damn thing literally tried to kill me, I tell you. I never went for a walk into those woods again. Signed, Anonymous. Translucent Being in Zion National Park. In October 2016, I was in Zion National Park. I came up to meet my parents, but they drove back to Vegas the next day and I wanted to do a hike. They're both handicapped and can't keep up with me hiking. So I stayed behind and hiked Watchman Trail by myself. Zion is always busy, but this day was relatively calm and there were very few people on Watchman, which is a less popular trail. I enjoy sitting in nature when I hike, so about 3/4 of the way up the trail I found a beautiful spot with a little stream and blue dragonflies. I stopped to relax and watch the dragonflies and was sitting on a big boulder just on the shoulder of the trail. I hadn't seen any people for a while and was in a bit of a meditative trance. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye to my right, I caught a glimpse of something big moving toward me. I turned to look, and for a split second, I saw a huge, translucent humanoid with very long arms walking toward me on the trail. The best way to describe its gait is lumbering. All within a split second, I saw it, I had an intuitive feeling that it knew that I could see it, and it vanished. It didn't run or turn back, it just vanished into thin air. I did not feel it was malicious, just surprised I could see it. I thought maybe I'd imagined it, but I've never seen ghosts or anything ethereal before. My gift is clairaudience. I couldn't get it out of my head, and later told my now husband I'd seen something I could only describe as like the Predator movie, but with a Bigfoot outline. I'd never seen anything like this video or David Paulides' work before, and that's the description I came up with. I first heard of someone else seeing something like this in Missing 411, and both my husband and I were shocked. I have no idea what the explanation is, but I know what I saw. Thank you. Signed, Kelly. Friendly Stick Being Encounter. My experience with the Stick Being wasn't unpleasant because it was so mischievous and made me smile. This was 30 years ago, and I collected bare winter branches from the floor of the woods to display in a white china vase in my home. After a few days, I started to find little things disappearing, then a little time later, finding the missing object in a ridiculously visible place. Example, losing my watch from beside my kitchen sink, then finding it balanced on the rim of the bath, a floor above me, and after I'd had a bath when there was no sign of my watch there. After a time, I saw peripherally a small, black, knobbly stick man about 18 inches high. He had twig limbs about as thick as your little finger, an oval, smooth face, sparkling eyes, thin-lipped big grin, and really funny nub-like hair and frondy bits too, all of it a darkish charcoal color. It peeped at me from various places, and I would hear a rather delightful tinkly laugh, and knew it meant me no harm and was just having fun with me. So I began just chatting to him. Knew he was male somehow, as if he was just a pal or friend visiting, and also left out nuts, honey in a tiny pot, and bits of fruit at night, and it was always gone in the morning, even the tiny pot. I knew after a time that he wasn't there by chance, so I thought back to see when he may have arrived. It didn't take long to realize it was the sticks I'd taken. He'd come with them. So I took them from the vase and announced I was sorry I'd taken the twigs without permission and was taking them back where I'd found them, but that I'd enjoy his company and pleased he had liked my food gifts and he was welcome to return any time. I returned the sticks and twigs and said sorry for just taking them and left, but learned a valuable lesson never to take things from nature unless you ask permission first. It's so important because nature spirits can cause you misfortune, even illness, if you disrespect them. Always ask, even when berry picking, and if I feel a negative atmosphere, I go somewhere else. I used to call my visitor Twig Man, and yes, he occasionally returned and I gave him food gifts. He sometimes left me seeds, which I planted. This is true, and it never struck me as odd or thinking I was delusional. I'm very stoic and level-headed, but I'm not blinkered. Please respect nature, and it will respect you, and often give you things money can't buy. Good things for your well-being. Thank you. Signed, Anonymous. Anubis or Dogman? Hearing these stories makes me think of the Anubis-type creature I saw once. I think it may have been a guardian spirit, but who knows? I was a child at the time, and me and Papa were out tilling the garden, and in doing so, dug up some native artifacts. He was part native, so he put them all back. But me, being a kid, I kinda stole a couple. Then, I was visited every night for a good 4, 5, 6 nights by this Anubis type entity who never showed his face, but I could see the outline of his shadow. A canine head with a man's body and very tall. First night, he told me to put the things back to honor my ancestors by being honest. I thought I was dreaming. Next night, same thing, but he would move closer to my bed every night. By the 5th night, he was right next to my bed and told me not to be afraid, but that I really needed to put the things back so they could rest. It was very uncomfortable for me to be that close to whatever this was, so the next day I put it all back and the entity never came back again. But I always felt watched after that, and I'd see black shadows out of the corner of my eyes all the time. I was never scared, per se, just more curious because this thing looked weird but seemed kind. Linda Godfrey put my story in one of her books. She was totally fascinated. I am too. I'd love to know what that was exactly. I also think possibly this or these entities lived in the back corner of our property, or even possibly a Bigfoot. That corner was not to be messed with at all, according to my papa. He said to never go there, and every time I got close to it, I got sick, like I was going to throw up. It was by this shelf formation in the ground. Could have been anything, but possibly a sort of mound of some kind that had been messed with to clear the land. I don't know. Kids are normally scared of things like that, but I only got scared after it left. Never understood that part either. I've been more fascinated than scared with the things I've seen or encountered. There was something in my grandparents' house that caused me to run through the hall because it felt like if I didn't, it would take me. I have no idea what that was all about. That entire house and land had some weird vibes surrounding and in it. And when I moved my kids in after my grandparents died, they also felt and experienced weird things there. Love, Nikki. Well, friends, let us know what you think about these stories in the comments below, but please be respectful of the opinions of others. And if you have any strange stories you would like to see featured in an upcoming video, email them to nationalparkmysteriesyt@gmail.com. We're very interested in stories that detail encounters with ghosts, humanoids, cryptids, or any type of other unknown entity that is beyond explanation. Thanks again for listening, and please be sure to give us a like on the video and to share and subscribe for more strange stories. Meanwhile, be good to yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time.